Welcome to the Legally Speaking podcast, powered by Kassoon Car. This week, I'm delighted to be joined by Lewis Alexander Baxter, who is a 21-year-old founder and CEO of the Blurred Line Group, the UK's first funding hub for local mental health charities and community projects. It doesn't stop there. He's also a non-executive director, public speaker, and radio presenter. So welcome, Lewis.
Thank you very much for having me.
Lewis, you're probably aware as a follower of the podcast, our customary open question is about suits.
Absolutely.
And how you would rate it on the scale of 1 to 10. From what you know of the legal world thus far, what would you give it out of 10?
I'm going to go for a 1 because I've never seen it, but I've been told that if you want to be a lawyer, Lewis, you don't aim to be like the lawyers off Suit. So I would say a 1 for that question.
Fair enough. And I think actually the more and more we've been through our first season, I think that the score is gently notching down lower than it started at 10. It's sort of navigating itself down to probably 1 or 2. I must say, it's an absolute pleasure having you on. I think you're one of the most inspirational, and I should just point out, Lewis is only 21 years of age, and from what he's achieved and done and trying to do is immensely powerful. So it really is a pleasure to have you on today. So
thank you very much
for joining us. So it may sound bizarre at such a young age, but it would be great to sort of know more about you and sort of give a bit more of a flavour of your background. So do you want to tell our listeners a bit more about you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a second-year law student at Durham University, and which keeps me busy, I have to say, doing any degree, but a law degree is particularly challenging. But in 2015-16, after doing my GCSEs and doing pretty well, I struggled with depression and had a big battle with depression for just under a year. I had to defer my studies from A-levels. But after I got the help and support I need, I sort of started a new sixth form, got the A-levels I needed to get into Durham, and I suppose the rest is history. But it took me a long time to speak up about my mental health from a personal level and share with family and friends. And it took me to the brink, I suppose, to actually finally speak up. So I took a walk that I take many times before in rural Lancashire.
Yeah.
And on that walk it wasn't good. I had the intentions to end my own life, to be honest, and to end it all and end the suffering that I'd been suffering from for many months. But fortunately, I got talked down. After many hours with emergency services and, people, loved ones around me, I managed to get the support I needed to build on from there. Fast forward, started life at Durham just over 18 months ago. And I've loved every minute of it. Had some struggles, obviously, trying to do the degree and launch the Blurred Line Group, but slowly but surely starting to see progress. I mean, there's some fantastic work going on across the country in terms of mental health. More mental health awareness going on now than ever before. But what we're not seeing is these statistics reducing, the suicide rate reducing, the number of young people looking for children and adolescents' mental health support. So the statistics are really, really high still for people with mental health conditions. And I want to not only give support to the people who have those mental health conditions, whether it be depression, whether it be anxiety or PTSD, whatever it is, but also support the charities that give those people that vital support. So at the Blurred Line Group, we provide that helping hand to charities. We're the UK's first funding hub, as you say, and we provide grants and mentorship to schemes, initiatives, projects across the UK. And usually the ones that are quite small as well, the grassroots ones that don't have those big advertising and social media budgets that people may not have heard of. And we support those little ones to help them blossom, help them increase their capacity, help them help more people. And that's our sole aim, really, to help those grassroots organisations.
Yeah. And I know one thing you're very passionate about, as you say, is there is a lot out there in terms of mental health at the moment. I think education and, people are starting to, talk more, which is great. But for the Blurred Line Group, you really do want to kind of make the message clear that you are different in the sense of your offering, and that's a real benefit to your audiences, right?
Absolutely. And we're in a very, very early stage as an organisation.
Yeah, how long have you been going? 18 months?
It's 18 months, but in this sort of new brand, it's been only a couple of months. We did our launch in London that you guys came along to, which is fantastic, in September.
Yeah.
So as this new organisation, as the new team that we're forming, it's been a couple of months. But you're right. There's a lot of awareness going on. There's a lot of speaking and reducing the stigma attached to mental health. But like I said, I think that real action, getting people the support they need is still lacking. There's still people, hundreds, thousands of people on waiting lists, trying to get support. And if we can just help a project, help someone, then we've done our job.
Yeah, and I know you have aspirations, obviously, to be a lawyer yourself, and most people listening in are obviously lawyers, but more broadly, and it can be quite a stressful job at times. Lawyers in law firms, they're under pressure from clients. There's lots of demands on them, and mental health is becoming more and more of a thing. So, what would you say to those people? How can people hear about the Blurred Line Group? How can people get involved? How can they use your sort of charity and society to sort of look for support?
So one of the things next year that we're trying to launch is once we've worked with businesses after a couple of months, once we've done a few of our events and we've got these pots of money, we want to help projects or people who want to start a project that might be in their workplace or might be in their university or school. And that gets that project off the ground. So it might be sort of a workplace chat or mentorship scheme, or it might be a coffee club, whatever it might be, all about well-being, physical and mental. And that's what people can do, adopt those positive practices in the workplace to help people with their mental health. And I think key, you mentioned the legal profession. It is probably one of the worst professions there is in terms of mental health and support. Great big firms, US and UK firms, are making great headway in terms of supporting their employees with mental health. But as I say to recruiters at law firms, more needs to be done.
Yep.
And if I can play my part and support both employees, graduates, trainees, staff at law firms, then that'll be great. And I've spoke at law firms and more regionally in the Northwest, and I'm open to doing that here in London as well, because I think hearing from a young person that has had a battle with depression and also a person that is looking to enter the legal profession, I think is really important. And for people that are coming into the profession, whether that is a trainee, LPC, GDL students, or indeed at university, I think what is important is you can look after your mental health and have a law career. And that's what I want to make clear.
Yeah, and I think the other point to mention is the Blurred Line Group is very inclusive. So if people, in the legal profession are maybe listening to this, maybe partners or general counsels or even just associates or lawyers, and they think actually, I'm really sort of want to help, then that's something you're very receptive and open to. I know you're sector agnostic, but particularly in the legal sector as well, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the thing. And what is a great point about the Blurred Line Group is that all the money that comes to us, we work with other projects and we're redistributing that money from day one. So, for example, if we partner with law firms or associates or partners here in London, we'd be getting that money distributed to local grassroots projects, those projects that no one's heard of, those projects that don't have a constitution, don't have a trustee board, aren't registered charities and struggle to access funding. That's what the Blurred Line Group does, is support those small organisations. And if you ask many people that have had a mental health condition, very unlikely that they will say they've had mental health support off a big national mental health organisation. It's likely they've had it from a small, independent grassroots organisation, and they're the ones we want to support. So I think I'm always open for conversations, and especially in the legal sector, being a prospective lawyer myself.
Yeah, no, good for you. And you mentioned it there, you've spoken at various law firms, but you are, you're very well known, people who follow your social media and what you're doing at your journey. You've achieved so much already, so congratulations for all that. But do you want to talk about some of your public speaking?
Yeah, thank you very much for your kind words, firstly. But public speaking has always been something that I've really enjoyed. It was one of the things that radio presenting actually was something that I did on the recovery from depression, just as something to focus on and take my mind away from the stresses of life. And that sort of developed now into sharing my story in terms of mental health on a platform, whether that be at universities across the UK. I spoke at FTSE companies to their full team. I've spoke at wellbeing conferences and also small teams just about positive practices in the workplace. And next year, I'm looking to do that as well in 2020. My sort of speaking slots tend to go up quite quick, only because I've got very minimal. Trying to do what I do, I've probably only got 1 or 2 a month that I can do next year. But what I'm looking to do is combine that with the Blurred Line Group. So if I partner with a business, for example, as part of that package, if they support us, might be a workplace presentation, might be a workplace speech, something like that. So, yeah, I love it. I think it's really important to encourage people. And if someone resonates from my story, then that's even better.
Yeah, what's been some of the feedback you've had from those sort of public speaking engagements? And what have you found sort of intrinsically, because, what have you got from that? And what do you think are some of the themes that you need to be sort of educating people on?
I think it's so cathartic. I think that's the key thing, that sharing my story genuinely makes my journey and my recovery that quicker, because I can share the struggles that I had, and seeing the audience react in the varying ways. We've got tears, we've got sometimes laughing. Sometimes people do not know how to deal with it. And actually, I spoke at a school in a very deprived area in the Northwest, and I spoke to those students, and quite a lot were laughing after the first 1 or 2 minutes of me talking about mentioning suicide. They thought this is a laughing matter. These kids are 14, 13, 12 years old. By the end, it was silent. You could have heard a pin drop. And that's the impact I want to try and make, that no matter what your background, what your beliefs are, where you come from, mental health can affect you, and it will affect you if you don't get the right support. And just seeing some of those youngsters come up to me from really struggling backgrounds and struggling to, for example, using food banks. I know one kid was talking about. And it's really eye-opening and really upsetting. But for them to talk about it after, a kid that laughed to a kid that came up to me at the end, that's why I do it.
Yeah, and that's a very powerful message. So thanks for sharing that. And again, you touched on it before, but radio presenting, Ribble FM, if I'm not mistaken. And, I'm a big fan of the Northwest. My wife's from Lancashire, and I know that's a good sort of Northwest accent coming through. But do you want to tell a bit more about sort of how you got involved with that and sort of what you get up to?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've done that for about 3 and so years now. I started that soon after my recovery, started sixth form, thought, well, let's try and do radio presenting. And it was great. I've won a national award for it, for Young Presenter of the Year, sponsored by BBC Local Radio. Have to get that in. And then I've sort of done outside broadcasts, I've done live events. And I prefer that part of it now, if I'm honest with you, the sort of public speaking or the live events, rather than being sort of in the radio booth. But it was just something that I did that I'd never done before, that was part of my recovery from depression. And that's what I urge people to do when I do my speaking. Find something you've never done before, something that might interest you, and give it a go. And 3 and a bit years later, I'm still in contact with Kath, who's the station director at that radio station, who's a great supporter of the Blurred Line Group and me personally. And that relationship has blossomed from me taking the plunge into radio presenting all those years ago.
Yeah, well, great stuff. And I said again at the top of the podcast, you also get involved in a lot of sort of non-executive director postings and not-for-profit work. Do you want to talk a bit more about that?
Yes, absolutely. One of the big, one of my main drivers for 2020 is obviously growing the Blurred Line Group and also supporting other young people on their journey in social entrepreneurship. So youngsters that are not just setting up, companies as a business, but companies that make real social change. And I'm here in London, and today meeting with 2 other young people who are setting up their own foundations and own organisations, from an environmental protection organisation to another mental health organisation. And, youth boards, trustee boards, management boards of charities are very underrepresented in terms of young people. And that's something that needs to change. I won't mention names for various legal reasons, but there are national boards of national young people's charities who do not have young people on the board. And for me, that's really eye-opening, really, where a charity or organisation tries to make a difference to young people and their lives, but don't have any young people represented on their board. So if I can help any youngsters set up their own social enterprises, then that's what I'll try and do, especially next year, using the skills that I've had in terms of my, fairly new journey with the Blurred Line Group, and give them the words of wisdom or any failures that I found along the way.
Yeah, great stuff. And if you were to give tips to people, you've talked about your battle with depression, which, thank you for sharing that. What have you sort of incorporated in day-to-day life, or what have you taken away that, I want to share that really helped me get through that? Is there any sort of tangibles you would give? I know you mentioned there were the emergency services and they were helpful, but is there anything sort of little things day-to-day that maybe have helped you as part of your recovery?
Yeah, two big things, I think. Firstly is no worry, no stress is too small. And I'm a big advocate of that. I don't tell anyone really my private life. I keep it very private as it is. But my mum especially is someone that I will tell even the minor of struggles that I'm facing. And just having that platform, someone to talk to is so important. But I respect that some people don't have those relationships with their family or friends. So maybe seeking independent advice from the NHS or from a counsellor is really important. And I really stress that, if you've had a bad experience with a counsellor or with various services, or go and try someone else. There's lots of support out there. Come and ask the Blurred Line Group for help. We can signpost to key services across the UK. But secondly, in terms of sort of day-to-day stuff, time management and journal taking is something that I do. Writing down what I want to achieve in this week or this month, and set myself daily manageable chunks. And there's some days that I just do a big cross in a red pen because my mental health isn't great that day and I don't do anything. Health really does come first. And I have days, I had a day about 2 weeks ago, I remember vividly, where on a Sunday I thought, I'm going to do nothing. I'm going to sit in my pajamas and do absolutely nothing. I had calls scheduled with people with the Blurred Line group, and I just said, mental health comes first. So I'm a big advocate of that. I think that's probably it in terms of advice.
And I think there's some key points you've mentioned there, particularly because some people might be listening in and thinking, oh, it's only this little thing, but it's really annoying me. I'm not going to go and talk to someone about that. But actually, if you let that fester, or it kind of plays on your mind, it might be a little thing, talk about that, really share that, because that will eventually help you sooner rather than later. I think I take away a point that, nothing is too small to be talked about, right?
Absolutely.
And as you say there, mental health, generally, you've got to put that first. And I think some people might be scared. It's like, I've got my work pressure, family pressure, I've got deadline pressure. And again, that just kind of leads to the issue. So somehow people need to find a mechanism where they feel, this is the most important part of my life at the moment in terms of getting my mental health straight. And they need to be able to speak up and feel like they're in an environment where they're able to do that as well. Because I think that's the key point, isn't it? If they feel like they're in an environment where they're not going to be heard and it's just like, well, we've just got to get on with it, that doesn't necessarily help. And that comes back to your point about educating organizations, educating more leaders, educating more people in charities and societies, right?
Completely agree. And coming back on what you said there, I think mental health is often sidelined in that you have to be in a box, you have to have depression, you have to have anxiety. But actually, I don't know the precise percentage, but over 30% of male mental health struggles are due to finance. And that's due to work pressure, not being able to put food on the table at the end of the week, or struggling to afford that holiday that their partner wants. And actually getting support in the financial aspect, whether that's with the Citizen Advice Bureau, a national organisation that provide financial support, independent and free. I think that is really important, because that snowballs. That little thing that might be a small financial issue may develop into a larger financial issue if you don't get that support. So finding that medium to speak up about your mental health or finance struggles is really, really important.
Yeah. And you are a bit of a juggler, you are juggling many things. So you're also an inspiration to other students, right? I don't know how you fit it all in, but do you want to sort of share maybe your tips to other students who want to be as proactive and get to where you have at the age of 21?
Neither do I, really. And actually, the hours per day just seem to get smaller and smaller, that I have less time for myself. I think it comes back to time management. It's about looking, what I have to do with the various things that you do in your life, and then allocating time to it. And also looking at those bigger goals. To put it bluntly, I'm not a first candidate. I don't think I ever would be. I don't think I ever will be. And that's because of I have dyslexia, so that's an educational sort of barrier, but also the fact that I want to do other things outside the sort of law and studies, because it can be quite challenging. Although you have members of staff that have done a law degree, it's challenging and time consuming. And I think having these other things to do, escapisms, is really important. So look at your long-term goals, look at your 3-year goals and think, where do I want to be? How do I get there? Is spending 15 hours in the library every day, 7 days a week, really going to get you there? Or can you look to become one of those whole-rounded people with music or sport or charity work and pro bono work coupled with the degree? And I'm a huge advocate of that, actually. I think it's so important to get more than just a degree from university, because not everyone is purely academic.
No, yeah, and well said. And I think the other thing is on that point as well, you're always looking for ambassadors, particularly on the sort of university side of things as well. So if people want to get involved, they should definitely get in touch with you about that, right?
Absolutely. One of our programs for 2020 is launching in over 10 universities UK-wide. And that gives us a footprint across the UK, but also allows students to become engaged in what we do. So we raise awareness on campuses. And also, importantly, if we raise money on campus, let's say we raise £1,000 at a university here in London, we will reinvest that £1,000 to start 4 projects at that university. Mental health projects, wellbeing projects, sports club that have that physical and mental health sort of link. And yeah, we're always looking for young people. As I say, we want young people to be involved in our national board, because young voices matter, but also in terms of ambassadors, because if you can commit a couple of hours per week or a couple of hours per month to help our cause, and you're a young person or an older person, it doesn't matter. We want to hear from you. And we've recently had chats last week with people who want to support with marketing, events, things like that. That's great. We're always open for sort of conversations with people.
And you've been, well featured in, national publications as well. And, you're very much getting yourself out there to promote this. Do you want to sort of talk a bit about that and sort of how you got those opportunities?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things when I was first setting out with the Blurred Line Group is I didn't want to make it become about me. And it's very hard to sometimes when the reason why I set it up was because of my mental health struggles and I wanted to give something back. So I thought, working with Austin, who's one of the team of the Blurred Line Group who focusing on sort of external relations, communication stuff, he just got in contact with The Guardian and said, this is the story. And they actually wanted to go down the personal route, the legal angle as well, the fact a law student trying to juggle all these things. But yeah, it's great to get recognition in The Guardian. I've had lots of local press as well back in the Northwest. We hope to have a lot more and get myself on panels and discussions and conferences. And also the Blurred Line Group get us out there as much as we can, because that's what it's all about, really.
Yeah. And as you mentioned before, I was at the launch of your London event, which I thought was fantastic. And it was great to see a number of sort of industry leaders sector-wide attending that. And that's just the sort of tip of the iceberg, really, in terms of where you guys are going on your journey. And you said some pretty direct stats that alarmed me, really, about this. And that's why I was so keen, as part of the Legally Speaking, to help educate and raise awareness to sort of get you on. Do you want to sort of give some of those quite alarming statistics around mental health in our country and, if things aren't done, where things could potentially lead?
Absolutely. And I've not rehearsed too many statistics, but the ones that stick out to me is firstly one in four of us will have a mental health condition. Now, I've always disagreed with that, and I've always said I think it's 4 in 4. I think we all have a mental health condition. But the other one is about the suicide rates, and suicide is the leading cause of death amongst young people, males under the age of 35, I believe. And I think that's really, really stark and frightening, really, that we're in the 21st century, that we've been talking about mental health for many, many years now, starting to reduce that stigma, and males are seeing no option but to take their own life. And being in that position a couple of years ago when I thought that I would be added to that statistic is really, it really does upset me to see that. But it is startling. And, we're not a suicide prevention charity, but what we will do is support organisations that are suicide prevention organisations, because ultimately, if we can see those statistics reduce in a local area, on a national level, and play our part in reducing that and tackling the mental health crisis, then that's what we're all about. Because I think it's only the statistics that turns the pages in the newspaper, turns heads. It's shocking, it's conversation starting, and it's wrong, and it needs to change.
Yeah, no, well said. And do you feel that universities are, because this starts at grassroots level, doesn't it? I think in terms of preparing people maybe for the real world and all the challenges. So, there is a large responsibility from universities readying people, even schools to some degree. I'm quite passionate about trying to sort of educate schools and getting people, it is a tough old world out there. You mentioned you're looking to try and partner with more universities, but yeah, tell us a bit more about that and your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's really hard to not a hard question, but really hard to see the statistics, really, because, more university students are suffering from mental health than ever before. And that's school children as well. I went to my old high school in Lancashire a couple of weeks ago and spoke to the sports teacher who was asking me about what was mental health provision like when I was there. And I, at high school, didn't have mental health issues really at all. Had a seamless 5 years at high school. And there was probably a couple that I'd heard of in the year that have had little battles. That waiting list now, I think it's over 70% of young people at that school and other schools in the area are accessing mental health support. And that shift over the course of 4 or 5 years is startling. And it really does start at a young age. What are the causes? I'm not too sure. I think social media plays a huge part.
That was going to be my question. What is your view on social media?
Yep. So I think for young people, one of the biggest causes of mental health, whether it's implicitly or explicitly, is social media. It's the Instagrams, the Facebooks, the Snapchats. I'm not saying any are worse than others. I'm saying they all have a big part to play in safeguarding young people's mental health. From seeing body image and young girls and boys, of course, seeing these finely looking six-pack toned girls and boys, it sort of sets this image that they have to be like that. And you really, really don't. And another thing as well is seeing a lot of harmful content on social media that Instagram and other social media say they are hiding from young people. But are they really? I'm not too sure. So I think social media, I don't know how you would go around doing that. Parents have a role to play. Schools have a role to play. Young people have a role to play to sort of safeguard themselves from this harmful content. But if it's coming up on their feed, it's hard to avoid it, isn't it, really?
iPhones weren't really around. I'm probably showing my age a bit now when I was at school, so I didn't have that luxury. But it must be tough if you're at school, university, or a younger person, and you've just got so much access to all of this sort of media. It's going to have some toll on you, right?
Absolutely. I think social media is a huge benefit. It really does support people with their studies and amongst other things, and keeps in contact with people around the world and friends and stuff like that. We're a more connected society than we've ever been before. That is true. But we're also the most lonely. And I think looking at the statistics of older people who are suffering from loneliness and isolation, and young people that are suffering from loneliness and isolation. I asked my cousins and other people of their age, 11, 10, maybe a bit older, 12, 13, when did the last time you called a friend or went around the house and played out? And mine used to be every day, but it's becoming a lot rarer now to be playing TIG outside. It's becoming playing Fortnite on the Xbox, isn't it?
Yeah. So true. I mean, I was very good at Poddy. Is that still around?
Poddy. I'm just going to nod, yes.
Or Speedball, but maybe we'll cut that out. Okay, and you are you've achieved so much at such a young age already. You're only going to go from strength to strength, and you need good people around you along the way. But within the next few years, what goals have you set yourself? I can see you very much getting more and more sort of media attention for the good. But where have you set yourself goals, and what do you want to where do you want to be, I guess, is my point in terms of making a real change and impact?
I think two things. Obviously, doing a law degree, when I finish that in the next 2 years or so, I'll obviously potentially practice in a couple of years in the city here in London. I will only join a law firm if I'm able to keep some of these mental health projects and initiatives going. And I've been very clear on that on some of my applications to these law firms as well. But I think ultimately, whether it's 5 years or 10-year goal is to work for a national NGO or social enterprise, whether in the mental health sphere or not. I love charity. I love the fact that it is running a business, but at the end of the day, it's not to line your own pockets, it's to line, it's to help people. And I think whether it's social entrepreneur and just getting involved in as many projects as I can, I don't know. It's a tough question, but I think law charity is the way for me.
Yeah, great stuff. And we've talked, it has been a very sort of, interesting but also deep discussion, which I really hope will benefit lots of people listening in. But perhaps more away from your sort of charity duties, away from the degree, what do you like to get up to for fun? What do you do for downtime? I know you probably don't get a great deal of it with being involved in so much, but give a flavour of what Lewis's downtime looks like.
Yeah, I'm asked this question quite a lot, obviously, because people say you do much, and I feel like I'm so boring. I literally, the answer is I don't really know. My downtime is the project, and I really mean that. You go into my own little bubble and work on things and ring people and grow the Blurred group as best as I can. Walking, seeing family, eating lots of food. I do like food and travel.
Favourite cuisine?
Tough one. I'm very traditional English food, I would say.
Yeah, good stuff. Well, Lewis, from my side, on behalf of everyone on the Legally Speaking podcast and all of our listeners, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your journey. It's only going to help inspire and hopefully help and prevent others in the future. So I wish you tons of success with your degree and future endeavours. No doubt you're going to be a superstar. So thanks so much for coming on today.
Thank you for the opportunity. Cheers.